International. Back in my stuff. Back in my stuff. Don't distract me.
There is a new narrative surrounding your Cincinnati Reds, and that's Cincinnati Reds America's team. We're going to explore that narrative. We're going to look at an outfield shakeup, and we're going to take your questions and comments on this live bonus edition of Locked On Reds. Hit it, Jeffrey.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. I want to thank you for joining us here today on this live bonus edition of the Locked On Reds podcast and making us part of your day. We encourage you to drop down into that comment section. Leave us a question, leave us a comment. Who do you think is the best Red? Do you think the Reds are America's team? And did Stuart Fairchild save his job in the outfield, at least for a little bit longer? We've got lots to discuss on today's Locked On Reds podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and we want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Everydayers, you are absolutely amazing, and we love having you on board. Before we jump into today's live, also wanted to shout out the fact that we've got a Discord going. Make sure you join that. It's a great community. Down in the comment section, we talk during games, after episodes, in between episodes and games, all that great stuff. So check it out today. But Steve, we've got to jump into this because it was an interesting narrative that I think some folks were whispering about. Maybe there were a couple of national prognosticators that were just like, the Reds are kind of fun. Does that make them like America's team or something like that? And then we got this last night.
We're America's team. It's a good feeling.
We got the chant going, America's team. You know, we're going.
Just absolutely amazing. So are those Cincinnati Reds America's team?
Listen, I love the fact that this narrative is player driven right now. I think you hit on this a little bit on the regular episode today that you did by yourself. Thanks for covering me while I was flying halfway around the world. But I think you hit on that a little bit, that this is more player driven than it is media driven or fan driven. And I love it. I love the attitude. I love the swagger. I love that this team suddenly finds itself in a position of being good enough, being exciting enough, being interesting enough to have this kind of swagger. You know, we didn't get this in 2022 because they were getting their brains bashed in every day.
Yeah.
We finally have a bunch of players that they want to win. They want to get better. They love the fans in Cincinnati. They want to build this energy around them, and it's infectious. It's contagious. It's hard to not get excited. You know, I've been for weeks now trying to tell you, like, let's ease up. Let's dial it back. Let's not go all in on this win the division now stuff. And then I found myself, you know, late last week going, they're going to win the division, Jeff. They're going to the playoffs. And it's just, I can't help myself because they create that kind of energy.
Yes, and let's squash the counter narrative on the other side of this, because I've seen a lot of people saying, well, just like, man, that's really braggadocious, and then they must have some real big heads about themselves. I think this is the team mentality that this team has created way back in spring training. Jonathan India, even Joey Votto, even though he was rehabbing, but Joey Votto talked a lot about this. David Bell talked a lot about this, about how this team had to gel and come together right away and not have a slow start. And sure, they started 7-15, but I don't know if you saw this, and it was making its rounds on Twitter. Since April 23rd, The Reds are 27-20. No other team in the NL Central is above 500. In fact, the second best record is the Pirates at 18-25. Like, the Reds are so much better than the rest of their division ever since they've started making all of these call-ups. And yes, there are still holes. This is not a perfect team. This is a team that needs some help in some different areas. But the craziest thing about where they need help at, they have built-in solutions coming off the injured list.
That's true. Or in one particular instance, being able to move other guys into a solution by just calling up, I don't know, a very talented Christian Encarnacion Strand. I was told to stop using CES all the time. Say the guy's name every once in a while. That was in the comment section on YouTube. I heard you guys. Christian Encarnacion Strand, and I don't say it exactly.
He did say that he's going to have Encarnacion on the back of his jersey, right? It's Encarnacion, not Strand.
He did. And that was because I think that when the Stows were having to make that jersey, they were like, it's a full circle around the number, and they didn't want to do it. So look, CES coming up onto this team solves some of the problems. The return of injured players, moving people around, forcing the Reds to make some moves, solve some of these problems. Guys coming back from the injured list solve some of these problems. And suddenly, by the time you get to the trade deadline, it's almost like they will have gone out and added dudes via trade without having to give anything up, because some of the players coming back, I fully expect to be contributors. Now, there's a couple question marks in there, but as a whole, I feel like they're going to be upgrading this team just by the fact of guys coming back from injury, and they're not going to have to give up anything to do it.
And I do want to hit on that a little bit later in more detail, but going back to the America's team argument, like I think of this, and it's funny because I've seen plenty of people talk about the America's team moniker, and they're just like, I don't know that this is a good thing. Like, the only other sports team that calls themselves America's team, everybody hates. If the Reds are in position for other fan bases to hate them, isn't that kind of a good thing? Like, nobody hates the Cowboys just because they call themselves America's team. They hate them because they're in the news all the time, because they're interesting, because they're actually doing something. The Reds, for pretty much most of my life, have done very little. I mean, I'm wearing this division championship t-shirt because 2012 was an amazing year, and that's really the best year as far as my Reds fans' existence that this team has looked. I mean, 1999 was awesome. 1995 was awesome. 95, I was still a little bit young. But the way that this team has come together around its young, budding stars, well, I think they can get there. There's lots of people talking really good things about Matt McLain and Spencer Steer and Elly De La Cruz, but also Jonathan India, the way that he's leading them. You're talking about Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft. Like, this team is just so good and so young. The fact that they have this mentality, I think it should be celebrated. I think there's an element of the defeatism for Reds fans and for Cincinnati fans as a whole that we get a little bit worried when our teams feel good about themselves. We think, oh no, that's not good. They can't feel good. No. They're just going to go back down to where they were a couple of years ago. I don't think that's the case.
I don't fault any Cincinnati sports fan for having that I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop mentality. We've all learned the hard way that that's a thing in this city. Shout out to Bald Reds fan over on YouTube saying Reds, white, and blue, baby. I love it. Here's the thing. This team is so exciting that it's forcing MLB Network and ESPN to talk about teams other than the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Dodgers. That, to me, that tells you everything you need to know. When the national shows are spending time talking about the Cincinnati Reds instead of Mookie Betts and the Dodgers, instead of Aaron Judge and the Yankees. That is a big deal. That tells you more about the success and the excitement and the energy surrounding this Reds team than anything you can say, anything that I could say, any comment that we could get. That will tell you more right now, because they are forcing the national media to sit up and pay attention.
Well, and what does every sports fan, it doesn't even have to be an American thing, worldwide, what does every sports fan love? An underdog. What were the Reds coming into this year? Completely forgotten. Not talked about at all. No one thought anything was going to happen from this team.
Well, we were told they were out of it on opening day.
By the owners. So, yes, everybody was just like, well, yeah, we're not even thinking about them. And now they are. Like you mentioned, MLB Network spent a segment, not 2 seconds, not like, Sean Casey being on MLB Network and saying, by the way, my old team, man, they're pretty plucky and interesting. Like they spent a segment talking about Matt McLain and how he compares to Alex Bregman. Dude winning World Series for the Houston Astros. We're talking about Matt McLain in the same breath. Like, this is the kind of thing that is so much fun to see. And I feel like we should embrace this. We should not be looking at the moniker of America's team and start to question it. We should be behind these guys, man. They are so much fun to watch.
They are. And as you mentioned, there are some things coming very quickly that are going to shake up certain areas of this team. The outfield being the biggest shakeup of all. Coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk about who could be coming back, who is going to have to leave in the process, and we're going to get some of your questions and comments and what you think about that. We're going to get into all of that coming up here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Bird Dogs. Listen, if you haven't tried these Bird Dog shorts, I am telling you, you are missing out. You've heard Jeff do the ad read. Jeff is not considered a schwanky dresser if you've ever run into him out and about in town. And really, neither am I. Neither one of us are. But these Bird Dog shorts are shorts that you can wear to go to the pool. You can wear them to go to the ballpark. You can wear them to go out to dinner. They just look great. If you saw me rolling around Great American Ballpark, I on purpose wore Bird Dog shorts the entire time I was down there, just to kind of shout out our sponsors. And they are so incredibly comfortable. They look great. They go good with the sports jerseys. I was able to go out on the town and hit the banks after the game and feel like I didn't look like a slob, Jeff. And I know you've had similar experiences. I'm sure Hannah was really glad to see you sporting the Bird Dogs versus what you're normally rolling around the ballpark in.
Yeah, the prestige level of the wardrobe definitely increased with some Bird Dog shorts in them, and you can increase your prestige and your comfort by going to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb and making a purchase, because when you go to that URL, you're going to get this awesome Yeti-style tumbler free with your purchase. Yep, Steve's got one too. Absolutely amazing shorts. They're the most comfortable shorts that I own, bar none. This is not like a thing where someone's telling me to say this. I actually put them on. I'm like, yeah, these are the most comfortable things I've ever worn. You should check them out. What's that URL again, Steve?
That is birddogs.com/lockedonmlb to get your free tumbler with your order. All right, the Reds are off, but don't forget, when they do play, you can follow every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds to get the broadcast of every pitch. All right, Jeff, let's get back into this whole outfield shakeup situation here on this live bonus edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. The outfield probably is the area where the biggest shakeups could be coming, and that's mostly necessitated by the guys that are going to be returning, right? Will Myers is down there right now on injury rehab, and he's probably just days away from being activated. I have said out loud, I felt like the best move was to go ahead and just designate Will Myers for assignment. I feel like I saw enough of whatever was going on with him that what his contributions could be are not worth disrupting what the young guys are doing. However, you and some of our commenters have made the realistic point that the Reds may prefer to try and give him one more opportunity to see if he can play well enough to become a trade chip, to become something that we could flip for. And I'm not saying anything big, but maybe a low level single A prospect that was once considered to be something that is not lived up to their potential. I could see Will Myers getting something like that if he can come back from the injured list and hit a little bit.
Well, and think about the trade that the Reds made of Tyler Naquin. Tyler Naquin brought back a dude named Hector Rodriguez, and if you've seen that name going around, it's because he's sitting Daytona on fire right now, like absolutely hitting the cover off the ball down there. Probably going to get a promotion pretty soon up here to Dayton. Looking forward to watching him in a Dragons uniform, but you can make these trades for guys that, sure, they're probably more down the road. Like Hector Rodriguez probably ain't coming up until, 2025, 2026, something like that. But you're investing in the future of this team. Nick Krall has constantly said he wants to build a functional organization that is good consistently year in and year out. Think about the St. Louis Cardinals before this year. Sorry, JD. I know our friend over at Locked On Cardinals is hating so far what's going on this year. So Will Myers still has that kind of value if you can bring him up. And here's the thing with that, knowing the value that he could bring, add that into his personal profile, and let's do this. There are really 5 guys that I'm looking at here because you have the 2 guys on rehab and you have 3 depth right-handed bats for the Reds on the bench when it comes to the outfield. I don't think they're sending down Will Benson. They're not going to weaken their left-handed part of the lineup. Plus, Will Benson's played well so far this year, or after coming up. I think you've got to rank Will Myers, Nick Senzel, Stuart Fairchild, Jose Barrero, and TJ Hopkins. Who are the 2 of those 5 that you want? Or I guess 3. No, I'm sorry, 3. I did the math wrong there. 3 of those 5, and the other 2 guys have to either be sent down or DFA'd.
Well, I definitely want to keep Will Benson. I feel like he has finally started to figure it out. I feel like that he is, well, maybe
he's not a part of this. It's the right-handers. The right-handers, yeah.
Oh, the right-handers. Okay, sorry about that. So let's just do it like this. I think the very first move is going to be to send Hopkins out just because it's crowded right now, and he really needs to play every day. I think that it's a disservice to him to keep him on this getting spot starts and the occasional pinch hit or substitution late in the game. They need to send him down, get him every day at bats, have him ready to be a reasonable inclusion in the 2024 situation. Have him ready to play come next opening day. So Hopkins has got to go back down to AAA so that he can play. The next piece of this, I think, is Stuart Fairchild. I know that he continues to show flashes. He continues to do things every once in a while that makes people ask questions like you asked early in the first segment, which is, did he play his way into, staying on the roster? And I think no. I think he's a very valuable piece that you stash down in AAA, that you bring up if somebody's injured, that can come give you a 10 to 15 day decent fill in while you're waiting for your regular guy to get back. I don't see Stuart Fairchild as a long-term viable starter / platoon dude on this team. So I'm sending him down too. So that's 2 guys right there. The next piece of this, I think, is Jose Barrero, the forgotten man. Everybody joked when he was in the starting lineup last night that, wow, Jose Barrero is still on this team. We have a Jose Barrero sighting. And then he goes out and he really doesn't play in a way that makes you think, yeah, we really need to keep him around. I think, like Hopkins, he's another guy that needs to go down, stash him at AAA, get him everyday playing time, and then you use him when there's an injury. You use him when you need to fill in. And the great thing about Barrero is now you can use him to fill in at multiple positions. He can come in if you need some help on the infield. He can come back up if you need some help in the outfield. He can cover all those positions. So those, I think, are the 3 guys. Those are the easy answers as far as I'm concerned, Jeff. You can send all 3 of those players down, not lose any of them, and keep them stashed in case of injury, in case you need a spot guy for a doubleheader, whatever it is. You can bring one of them back up to help fill out the roster.
So you could conceivably do that. You could send down those 3 guys, and you could bring back from rehab Senzel, Myers, and Joey Votto. Then you would open up the 3 catcher plan and cut off, Kurt Casale there probably, and then you bring up CES, and then there's your moves. That's how your roster gets shaken out. You don't have anything that's too jarring of a move for this roster, because I definitely think they have to consider any sort of chemistry that the team has built in the locker room whenever they make these moves of whoever they're calling up. But it's obvious, like Joey Votto's coming back, Nick Senzel's coming back. I think it's 70% obvious that Will Myers is coming back, and I think it should be almost more so that CES gets called up. Like, I think it should almost be a better chance of CES getting a call up than Will Myers getting cut. I think should be the way that should shake out. So yeah, I would agree with you. I tend to believe that if they're only going to cut, or if they're only going to send down 2 outfielders, I do think you send down Barrero and Hopkins, and I think you keep Fairchild. But looking ahead to the other moves that need to be made, not just Will Myers and Nick Senzel, it does make sense to send down all 3 of those guys. Plus, you could play Spencer Steer the corners.
Right. And I will say, Jeff, I'm not ignoring the fact that those moves don't necessarily solve a 40-man roster problem, but I think there's other guys on the 40-man that the Reds could get through waivers and not lose when the time comes. There's going to be the active roster shuffling in order to get these guys back, and then there's going to be the 40-man roster shuffling to get these guys back. And I think the 40-man is not as big a deal. There's going to be ways that the Reds can do that, and with players that nobody's going to scoop up and immediately take away from the system.
No, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think overall, I mean, this is such a good problem to have. We're not talking about shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic like we've seen in the last couple of years, where it's just like, yep, we got one waiver wire ad that we're replacing another waiver wire ad with, like things like that. We're talking about, Nick Senzel, who has shown some flashes. I'm not going to say that he's fully back, but he's shown some flashes so far this year. We're talking about getting Joseph Daniel Votto back in this lineup, which is super exciting. And then Will Myers. I mean, Will Myers could be a very interesting piece for this team, and it's going to open up the ability. And also, too, I almost forgot about this, Jake Fraley. He's on the IL. You're going to have to make a move to bring him back as well. But you will open up the possibility of having platoons all throughout the outfield, because you can have a full left-handed outfield and Friedel, Benson, and Fraley, and then you can have a full right-handed outfield with Myers, Senzel, and Spencer Steer if you wanted to. So I think that this is a very good problem for the Reds to have.
It is. And now, Jeff, we have reached my favorite time of these lives, because coming up here, we're going to go all in on the question and comment section. If you're watching us live on YouTube right now, thank you so much. We're getting to your stuff coming out of this next break. And if you're on the audio feed, we're going to put this as a bonus episode. You'll note that it's not broken up. It's going to be a giant long episode for you to get all of your Reds information. And we're going to get to those questions and comments coming up right after this.
Before we do, though, wanted to remind you that you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast as they head down to Houston to face the defending World Series champion Astros starting tomorrow night on the SiriusXM app. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. And as always, thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Make sure that you're following us right here on YouTube. We've got so much content for you as we move through trade season. Going to be lots of rumors and lots of moves that we will keep you apprised of each and every day here on Locked On Reds, because we are here with you each and every day. All right, Steve, what do we got here? What's
All right, we're going to pick up right where we left off there in that last segment, and that's with Joey Votto. Mr. E checks in, and I want to get this out of the way right now. Mr. E says Votto only comes into the picture if he can get something going down at AAA. It would be great to have Votto on this team for the next few seasons or more if he could become productive. Mr. E goes on to say, clearly it wasn't just surgery that he needed. Whatever it is with him is still an issue. I don't agree with that, Mr. E, as far as that there's something else going on. Look, Joey Votto was a little over 10% below league average last year and the year before with one arm. He has had a total shoulder and bicep reconstruction. And I think the fact that he managed to get back into some spring training games, albeit very prematurely, made us think that he was further along than he really was. Joey said all along that he was going to be the one to dictate when he returns. He was going to be the one to say when he felt like he was all right. The fact that he's now on his second rehab assignment tells me that he feels like physically he was ready to go out and do some things. His at-bats down at AAA have looked better. I know that the batting average, the counting statistics don't necessarily say Joey Votto's ready to come set the world on fire, but his at-bats have looked good. He's been down there drawing walks. He's been down there playing in multiple back-to-back games. He's been doing all the things that he needs to do. Remember also that Votto is a notorious slow starter, and you can't really, and this for him is spring training. He's going to be coming out of spring training. Here's what I anticipate. He's going to come to the active roster when this rehab stint is over. He's going to start slow. Everybody's going to call for his head, and then he's going to get hot and remind us why he's Joey Votto. That's my prediction. That's what I think is going to happen, and that's the way that I think it's going to go. Yeah,
no, we're in total agreement here. Like, I find it interesting because I've been checking out this Substack. It's a guy named Will Carroll. He does a lot of injury updates and things like that. He was at Louisville. He was watching Joey Votto in his most recent rehab game. I think he saw like a Tuesday game, and he was saying he looks a lot better. He's really extending through his swing. He wasn't doing that in his first rehab stint. He was doing a lot of short arm swings, just didn't look right. And he says now he's really extending. Over the weekend, I believe it was on Sunday, he hit a monster home run, like absolutely screamed it. It was a beautiful shot. So I really think that the key here is not, okay, what's his batting average in Louisville, or what's his on-base percentage, or how many hits is he getting, things like that. We're looking at how does he look at the plate, how does he look when he's running the bases, when he's playing in the field, things like that. Because he's obviously going to have some weird statistics on his rehab as he's just literally trying to get the muscle memory back in his arm. It's not the case of, well, he's just going to pick up right where he left off right before he had the surgery. They literally had to rebuild the muscles in his arm. Like, and the way that everything that way, or that might be a little bit dramatic, but it was a huge surgery. And you don't just come back from that like everything is hunky-dory. Like, I think that we are going to see Joey Votto take a minute to get going, but I still think that we will see a Joey Votto that's much closer to the 2021 version than the 2019 or 2020 version.
Absolutely. Kim Bolin checks in, and I show this to get to the next comment, but Cam checks in and says, the Reds are winning the National League Central. Bet on it now. I think Jeff and I at this point are right there with you, Cam. But
I think
Scott
their odds are actually under 10-1 now. I think it's, I forget exactly what it is specifically, but like at the beginning of the season, their odds were like plus 4,000 or something.
I think you're looking really good if you took the over on the 65.5 win total. I think that's going to be.
Told you to.
Scott Horsemeyer checks in, Jeff, and says, does anyone trust this ownership group to do what it takes to keep this going? Well, here's the thing. I think that what I trust this ownership group to do now is stay out of Nick Kral's way. They're going to give him a budget and tell him to go baseball. And that's the best situation that we can hope for, because the Castellinis are not selling this team despite whatever billboard you may have seen in Cincinnati. It's not happening. They're not selling the team. What I think they did learn is that they have to stop meddling with baseball operations. Their job is to set a budget and get out of the way. And I think that they've embraced that. Now, do I think Phil's going to stop saying dumb things? No. Do I think that there's still going to be times where I refer to him as the SOB, that's son of Bob, when he does things? That's absolutely going to happen. But I trust at this point that they've learned enough with the blowback that they receive from meddling in the baseball operations that they won't do that anymore. And what they're learning is if they do that and they have good baseball people, the Reds will win games, which will cause people to buy tickets, which will make them more money. I think that's what they're learning. And yes, I'm confident in them staying out of Nick Kral's way.
And that's what we've been saying, right? We've been saying this for the last couple of years, really, is that just, provide the front office with a budget and let them do their thing. Let the baseball people baseball. And I don't necessarily believe there is anything that Phil or Bob have to do with the day-to-day machinations of this team anymore. If that were the case, Luis Castillo would probably still be on this team, and Tyler Mahle might still be on this team. They were so attached to the whole idea of, well, we can't trade away fan favorites, and then they torpedoed the first attempt at this rebuild back in 2015. But now they have gotten out of the way and they said, you know what, Nick, this is your deal. This is your plan. You run your plan. And I think that we are seeing that. And that's really all we can ask, because we can scream until we're blue in the face for ownership to spend more money on this team. But it's just about letting the smart baseball people do smart baseball things. The Guardians have shown that. The Rays have shown that. Heck, the Arizona Diamondbacks this year are showing that. Like, you don't have to spend. And as much as I hate to say this, because I would love to see the Reds do this, because it'd be a really fun offseason, but you don't have to spend $450 million to make a good team.
No, there's going to be an interesting exercise that we do at the end of this season when we add up what the Reds spent per win and when we add up what the Mets spent per win. And
the Reds got a better record right now.
I think the Reds are going to end up in the value column on that one for sure. And to your point about the ownership group meddling, an example, folks, in case you've forgotten, there was a time where Dick Williams had arranged a trade of Billy Hamilton to get something in return for Billy Hamilton that would have benefited the team, and Bob Castellini torpedoed it. That's all you need to know about how the ownership group meddled in baseball operations. So, I do not blame Dick Williams at all for jumping over and running Skyline Chili versus sticking with the Castellinis. I don't know that the Castellinis would have ever turned Dick Williams loose like they've turned Nick Krall loose. And I think that's because Dick Williams wasn't a believer in being able to do it without spending the money as well. Dick Williams wanted to spend on top of doing the things.
And he did spend money in some good places. I mean, Dick Williams rebuilt this player development system, and Nick Krall kind of tweaked it whenever he got here because, as we have learned through some different people we've talked to, the Reds kind of overcorrected, so they had to come back. But it was just, I think Nick Krall has done a fantastic job overall. I mean, we can nitpick at a couple of different things here and there, like, all right, you really should have gotten a better veteran starter this offseason, but the big picture has been so clear. And if you can't see where this team is, where they're going, and still have this hatred for how the Reds are running things, then I can't help you, because they are proving us all wrong that sure, last year sucked, but there was a vision, and we're seeing it come to fruition.
Greg checks in and says, time to change the name of the podcast to Locked On America's Team. I love it. Listen, Jeff, Cam checks in with a thought that you spent a little bit of time talking about this, and I want you to expand upon it. Cam says, Matt McLain is the best Red right now. And you spent some time talking about that, I think, on today's episode, and I have a hard time arguing for anybody else.
Yeah, I've seen some arguments, too, from folks that say, well, Spencer Steer, or there were a few that said Alexis Diaz. I actually saw some on Twitter last night that were saying that it's Alexis Diaz. And look, Alexis Diaz is automatic at what he needs to do. But Matt McLain is out there every day. Matt McLain is out there for 4 or 5 at-bats each and every night. He can affect the game in a much bigger way than Alexis Diaz can. And when he has that opportunity to do so, he has. Production-wise, amazing. He's hitting over 300, and it's a small sample size. I understand that. He's slugging over 500, but in 28 games, 13 of those games are multi-hit performances. Like, that is, in and of itself, is a just phenomenal stat for a rookie to have, because this is the point, and we're already seeing it with Elly De La Cruz, where guys are starting to learn how to pitch to them. They learn how to throw backwards or pitch, throw them some stuff they haven't seen in AAA before. Steve, Matt McLain's batting average against breaking balls is higher than it is against fastballs. There's something about this dude that is just different. And the segment that Mark DeRosa had on MLB Network talking about his swing mechanics and things that if you ever watch like a swing coach video, like every so often I'll get in this hole on TikTok, like different guys talking about, great hitting approaches and things like that. Matt McLain literally checks every single box that they say. Like, he is mechanically sound. He is physically strong. He is mentally strong. I mean, how many times have we seen him talk about, like, oh, I just had a great game? Yeah, I kind of forgot about that already. We're looking at tomorrow, trying to win tomorrow. Like, he is just so focused on what is next that he has no time to worry about whether he succeeded more than people thought he would or that he failed miserably. Like, there's no scenario that I think can rattle this dude. And he is only 28 games into his big league career. And lest we forget, and this was a point that Mark DeRosa made that I totally forgot, he was drafted in the first round twice. The talent has always been there.
It has. If you recall how excited I was after I sat and talked with him last season when we did that interview, I really came away from that believing in him and believing that he was the real deal. And I'm super excited to see what he's doing and just him delivering on all of the things that he said he was going to do. Jeff, we spent some time talking about the outfield shakeup and how that was an area that the Reds needed some help in. We didn't to this episode. We have in the past. We've talked about the fact that the starting pitching is a work in progress. There is some situations developing there. And one of those situations involves Nick Lodolo. Parker Perry checks in and says, Nick Lodolo will be rested and ready for a playoff push. From your lips to God's ears, my friend. If you missed the update on Nick Lodolo, he's still in the boot, and he had an MRI done to look at how that Achilles was healing. It's being framed. The narrative around it is positive results. Good news on Nick Lodolo. The thing is healing. However, he's still in the boot, and best case scenario now is that he's 6 to 8 weeks away. We're talking about August for a potential Nick Lodolo return. I feel like when we talk about best case scenarios, as far as injuries and medical stuff surrounding the Cincinnati Reds, that's never how it works out. I think probably it's more realistic to anticipate a mid-August to beginning of September situation for Nick Lodolo. And that would be under normal circumstances, the way this team has played in the past, where I would be like, there's no point. Leave him shut down. Bring him back next year. No, I think these Reds are going to be in playoff contention. So I anticipate a September shot in the arm, pun intended, from Nick Lodolo into this rotation to help get the Reds over the hump, win the National League Central, and be pretty dangerous in a 5-game series to open up the playoffs, or a 3-game series to open up the playoffs.
Yeah. Can we stop letting David Bell write the prognosis for the PR team? Like, there's no dude that has more confusing medical updates than David Bell does. Like, David Bell, he constantly did this with Joey Votto. He's just like, man, everything is moving forward. It's really positive, and he hasn't hit yet. It's like, no, you just said two totally different things. Like, there's no such, and as much as I love it, and I love that they're being kind and sensitive to Nick Lodolo's situation by saying things like this, but saying, yes, everything is moving forward and positive. We've just pushed back his return date significantly. Like, no, that's not a thing. Like, okay, you're trying to soften the blow. I understand that. But I will say this, when it comes to Nick Lodolo, and his time frame and when he comes back and things like this, he's basically going to show up as if the Reds just acquired an ace. And yeah, I know that we kind of figured him into the plans, like we're going to figure him into the future plans. But the fact that he's been gone for so long and the Reds have still played very, very well, the Reds will be good. And then he will return and hopefully be Nick Lodolo with a good Reds team behind him, with a good defense behind him. And that is very exciting. Like, I know that's like very optimistic and very Reds colored goggles there, because it sucks that he's not pitching at this moment for the team. But if we have a way to look at it, hopefully he's coming back 100% ready to go, like the Reds just traded for, I don't know, Sandy Alcantara or something.
Cam checks in, Jeff, and says there's no room on the infield for CES. That's the only issue. I don't agree with that. I think there's creative ways to build out the lineup every day where you get everybody full-time playing time, just not necessarily all at one position. I think CES plays a lot of first base, DHs on the days when Joey Votto's in the lineup. When you're resting Joey Votto, CES can drop back to DH. Steer could play first base. McLean could play second base. Elly could be at shortstop. Steer could get reps at third. India can DH. Steer can jump to the outfield. There's so many moving parts. This is why I've been saying all season that it's so important that all of these guys play multiple positions, because there is going to be some juggling involved, but it can be done, and it can be done in such a way that everybody still gets a full season's worth of plate appearances.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're talking about Christian Encarnacion Strain playing first, playing DH. He can play a little bit of third too. He's not terrible over there. He's not near as good as Elly De La Cruz, but he's still pretty decent defensively at third base. But overall, this team is going to be very interchangeable. Like, gone are the days where you see the position designation before a guy's name, and that's just where he played. Like, period. There was no moving around. Like, when the National League got the DH, it's not because there was just an excess number of guys that are like Jim Tomei and Edgar Martinez out there who can only DH if you have them on their team. It's simply because the National League was done using the pitcher as a batter, and now they can use their same guys, giving them a pseudo off day where they don't have to play in the field, but they're still in the lineup and they're still able to contribute.
Absolutely. And the fact that we're not running the important part of the 3-catcher plan right now, which was Tyler Stevenson taking reps at first base and DH, right, that would have complicated things a little bit. You know, if Tyler Stevenson had done that and done it well and been the big bopper that we thought or at least I thought he was going to be when they announced this move, then that would complicate things. It would be true that there might not necessarily be room to add CES to this mix, but because it looks like Tyler's going to just be a catcher and occasional DH, there's room for CES.
I still think that as good as the vibes are around our Cincinnati Reds, I still think the most moment of the season was whenever David Bell said in a post-game presser, they're just like, we realized that we were asking him to get better at catcher, better at hitting, and better at being a first baseman by doing this plan. It was like, you think? Like, come on.
Nobody said that in the meeting, huh? Nobody brought that up. Listen, Josh checks in with this. Do we think it will help Elly adjust faster if they let him play shortstop? He doesn't seem as comfortable at third base. I don't see that he's looked uncomfortable. Look, I meant to grab the breakdown either from Obscure X Reds or I think Bruce Spalding had the same breakdown that showed what Elly De La Cruz has done his first 40 approximate plate appearances at each level throughout the system.
Right.
He's right on par with what he's done for the first 40 plate appearances at every level. And what happens is the first 40 look like he's looked right now. And then once he gets over that hump, once he starts approaching 50, 60 plate appearances, he starts knocking the cover off the ball. And he's done that consistently at every level that he's played in. His defensive positioning has absolutely nothing to do with that. He's been playing shortstop and third base throughout the system. I know his splits this year was about 2/3 at shortstop, a third of his time at third base, but he's been playing multiple positions all along. This is not anything new. The only problem that I've seen with him at third base is that sometimes him and Matt McLain have had some communication issues as far as who's going to take a ball, because they both are such athletes and they both have so much range that they both can get the balls that under normal circumstances, you only have one guy that can get to. And,
right.
in this case, the Reds are blessed that the whole left side of the infield can range incredibly well. So that's been the only downside to me, is that they're tripping over each other on balls that would normally get through. So I have no problem with Elly De La Cruz playing at third base. I ultimately think that's where he's going to end up. I know that that's an unpopular opinion, but I think he's not done filling out. He's not done bulking up. And when he does, when he finally becomes the guy that he's going to be at age 23, 24 and is bulky and big, you're going to want him at third base. You're not going to want him at shortstop. So I have no problem with that.
It's a great day, because I mean it's fun to see two guys going after the ball because they both think they can get it, as opposed to Mike Moustakas and Kyle Farmer fielding over there, where it's just like, can you please get that? Because I'm so glad that we have a left side of the infield that is just, I mean, we have a whole team. The Reds roster is full of athletes. There's no longer these random dudes that are playing out of position that should probably be playing corner infield or DH.
Will Culver checks in and he says, do we think Shane Bieber is a likely target for the Reds? Improves the starting pitching. I don't normally buy into this. Like, let's talk about specific guys that they can go after, but I put it up there to say this. I am fairly adamant, Jeff, that I don't think they should go out and really get anybody. I am not willing to part with the prospect capital it would take to bring in a starting pitcher that would make enough difference to go out and get them and insert them in this rotation. If you're going to get anybody like that, you're going to have to give up something to get something. And I'm simply not willing for the Reds to do that. I want them to just continue to patch together a rotation, wait for Graham Ashcraft to come back. And hopefully after being shut down for, 15 days, he's going to come back and have his head screwed back on straight. I don't know what all of the issues are with him. We only have been able to speculate. As far as his health goes, he says that he is fine. He's on the injured list because he got hit by a ball in the back of his leg, just below the knee. So it's nothing with his arm. It's not an elbow issue. It's not a shoulder issue. It's simply that he got an owie on his leg. So they, I think, use that opportunity to shut him down and let him clear his head. You and I had talked about that what he really needed was a quick stint on the IL, with a case of elevated ERA, and let him reset a little bit. And I think that's what they did. That's my read on the situation anyway.
Yeah, it's sit down and think about it for a second, because they listed it as like a thigh contusion, which is a fancy way for saying bruise. So yeah, calf. I mean, that's, I don't think, and I think that even Graham Ashcraft in his post game was adamant that he wouldn't need an IL stint. So I think that if he had his way, maybe he misses one start and he's back. But this was probably the team just saying, let's take a beat, real quick, sit down, have a drink of water or something. But yeah, I don't think so. Here's the thing about Shane Bieber, because I've seen him mentioned quite a few times. I think he's on an expiring deal, or no, I think he's got one more year of control, actually, which means he's just going to be super expensive. And the Guardians might actually be in the exact same boat as the Reds. Like, I don't necessarily know that they're going to want to sell. So you would almost have to impress them with an offer, which means you're talking about Marte or Arroyo or Collier. And I don't want to, I'm not thinking about any of those guys for any sort of trade like that, especially for a guy like Bieber. Like, once he hits free agency, he's going to get some money. So I don't think that this is a scenario that the Reds do want to open up the coffers for and really go after a guy. Like, I think that you and me are of the same mind with this, that this trade deadline season, the Reds need to just almost kind of do what they've done in the past couple off seasons and make moves within the margins, because this coming off season, we're going to be busy. We're going to be talking about all the moves that the Reds should do because they're going to have the ability to make lots of moves. But so far this trade deadline, I don't really want to see them make that nuclear trade that we're just going to go crazy about. And I don't think that's going to be a big issue.
See, Mother Goose is right there with you. Mother Goose says Guardians are only 3.5 back. They are not selling yet. And even if they do, he will cost a ton of prospects. Yeah. Mother Goose, we're right there with you.
Let me piggyback this, and Mother Goose is actually the reason that I'm going to do this. Would you make a trade with the Cardinals?
Ooh, no. I don't think, even if we're getting something really great in return, like I said, anything great's going to cost. Right. And I am definitely against trading any prospects that can bite us in the butt later within the division. I am adamantly against that. And to your point, because I know the Brewers are going to blow up their team, I'm not trading with them either. I'm not trading with anybody in the division.
No, that's fair. And I agree with you. Like, I feel like it's an easy one-to-one comparison of, well, what are you going to get from this trade? And there's already some trades that the Reds have made when they traded away big players for prospects that I think they've already kind of won. Like the Luis Castillo deal is still going to be, out there for discussion for a few more years, but I think they've already won the Eugenio Suarez, Jesse Winker trade. I think they've already won the Tyler Mahle trade. Sonny Gray that's a tougher one because Chase Petty's still a few years away, but they've made some really good trades.
He's pitching well in Dayton though. So
yeah, he is. Yeah.
I'm not ready. Okay, you're right. We can't call that a win yet, but I'm definitely saying Chase Petty has shown enough to not say that was a bad deal. It's not a bust.
Yes, which is also a nice way of saying that Nick Kroll doesn't make bad trades, but I think that I think I'm with you. I don't think we make an in-division trade. That just opens up all kinds of can of worms.
Fastface says it's important to know that this is uncharted territory for us. We don't know how to act. It's a great thing. I said that, and I said that at the beginning of June, right? Like it's the first week of June and the Reds are playing meaningful baseball and we don't know how to act.
I'm just imagining Ricky Bobby like
that's where we are. Like
I don't know what to do with my
hands. Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly right.
This is fun.
So Justin follows up on that and says he's afraid to get his hopes up about the Reds, but they're playing great. He's been a fan since he was born, in 1985. I think that's where we all are. We talked about this a little earlier, Jeff. I don't fault any Cincinnati sports fan at all. And I'm not just talking about the Reds, any Cincinnati sports fan for being a little apprehensive because our experience tells us that when something good like this happens, we're about to get bashed in the forehead with something. Well, or the ownership group will do, or the team will do, but this is different. This is a different way than the Reds have ever acted before. This is a different style of building. It's a different type of rebuild than we've ever seen. And the more it continues to be successful like this, the more I'm really starting to let my guard down and embrace the fact that, hey, these Reds are pretty good.
And that's another point to the whole being skeptical about how ownership's going to react to this team, is that from 2015 through 2019, they realized the players that they received through trades and the players that they had drafted and developed in their system weren't going to cut it. So they tried a very quick, let's sign Mike Moustakas, let's sign Castellanos, let's sign all these guys, trade for Trevor Bauer, all this other stuff, and we're going to go all in on 2020 and 2021 and really try to win. And then it just didn't work. This is not a scenario where the window is opening this year to only close after next season. The window is opening, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think that there's no really descript time when it's going to close because this roster is super young, and everyone who is a key player on this roster right now is under control for a handful of years, not just 1 or 2 or 3 years, like a handful of seasons. And we could really see the Reds go into an era of what we really complain about with the Cardinals. Like we always complain, man, the Cardinals are never out of it. They're always in it. They're always in some kind of playoff discussion. I think we are entering an era where the Reds are always going to be in playoff conversations.
Wolfpack 765 checks in and says his question: who platoons with Captain Chaos at center field? So TJ Friedel, I'm becoming a believer in TJ Friedel. I just
absolutely.
say for sure. But
I think
when
he
you
should
do
hit against lefties too. We're gonna die on that hill, but yeah.
True, but if as you mentioned earlier that you go straight platoons, all lefty outfield, all righty outfield, someone's got a platoon with Friedel in center, and I imagine that will be Nick Senzel because I think his time in the infield is going to be severely limited, even if they don't bring up CES. If they do bring up CES, there's absolutely going to be no reps for him on the infield. So he'll have to be the righty in that center field platoon.
Yeah, because the main reason he was on the infield was whenever lefties were pitching, and now you've got 3 right-handers covering the positions that he plays on the infield. So I think that if he gets any third base time, it's just because one of McLean, India, or De La Cruz actually got an off day, and then you'll see Senzel in the infield, but I think we'll see him mostly in center field.
Steve checks in and says Barrero needs to be traded. And, I don't know what you get. That's the thing. It's very easy to be like, this guy needs to go. And I've seen some of that directed around Will Myers. The question is, who's going to give you anything for Will Myers? Who's going to give you anything for Jose Barrero? At best, if there's someone that really wants them, they're just going to sit back and wait for the eventual inevitable cut of Will Myers. And as far as Jose Barrero goes, another year or so, the Reds may be willing to give him away just to free up his 40-man roster spot. Yeah. So nobody's going to give you anything to get that guy. Now, my hope with Jose Barrero is that they send him down and he plays every day and starts to look valuable again. And then maybe you try and trade him. And I think the Reds hope with Will Myers, and it's why I think, like Jeff said, 70% that they go ahead and shoehorn him back onto this active roster, is the hope that he comes back up. The weather's nice out at GABP, and we all know what that means. The ball flies. So I think the hope is that he goes, he hits, he delivers a little bit, and suddenly, he's worth a low-level single-A prospect to just get him to somebody else. The Reds may have to eat a little bit of the money, but you get something in return. I think that's the hope. I just don't see that there's anybody that's going to give you anything for some of these guys that are quasi in the way. The Jose Barreros, the Will Myers, even Nick Senzel. We talk about what to do with Nick Senzel. Well, he has no trade value. Best you could hope for is if there's another team out there with a former top pick that has kind of been a bust, and you do a change of scenery deal for both guys. But beyond that, that's not going to bring you anything that has a meaningful impact on the current team's construction, the current team's ability to win baseball games. So I just don't see anything like that happening.
Yeah, it would literally be a 1-for-1 of a guy who's in the way for a guy who's in the way. It's not going to be something for a future piece.
Let's see what else we got here. Jared on Vinyl says Myers should get one more chance if he is really completely healthy. He's been good for so long. It's hard for Jared to believe that he just fell off a cliff. I agree with that. And I think that's the Reds thought process too, right, Jeff? I mean, That's the reason why they give him a roster spot and hope that what was going on was part he was injured, part, Cincinnati in April plays completely different than Cincinnati in June and July. So, we talked about when they signed him that he's a guy that's built for Great American Ballpark. Yes. Great American Ballpark built for him. It can be a very good relationship if he can hit the ball. So, Jared, you're not wrong. I don't know that he just fell off a cliff, but Matt Kemp fell off a cliff and they ultimately had to cut him. So it happens, but right. I think Jared it's more likely Jared's right here.
Yeah. And I think that, Matt Kemp was basically just seen as the bit of contract from Homer Bailey that they were about to cut anyway, if they hadn't have made that trade. I think that when you look at Will Myers, it's twofold. They see the back of the baseball card and they see that he's done it before. And because he's done it before, if he starts to do it again for a short period of time this season, you do have trade value. Whereas Jose Barrero, Nick Senzel, guys like that, they've never done it before. So if they start doing it for a short time this season, every other general manager in the league is going to look at it and be like, okay, he needs to do it longer. I'm not really that interested in him. Like, he just had a really good month. Congratulations. Aristides Aquino had a really good month whenever he first came up. So I think that there is an element of that. They're like, back of the baseball card, if he plays to that, we can get a nice deal. And then the other thing is a little bit of ego. They spent $9.5 million on the guy, and they spent that same amount of money on Tommy Pham, and they got Nick Northcutt for him. So if they can get something out of Tommy Pham, they think they can get something out of Will Myers.
You're absolutely right. Let's try and get to just a few more. We're coming up on our hour time here, Jeff, but I want to try and squeeze in a few more of these. And listen, you guys in the comment section watching live, you all are amazing. We've reached the point in this where there's so many different conversations going on in the chat that I can't keep up and get them all in. You guys are great. It's my favorite part of doing these lives. I do go back and read all of these and look over everything we didn't get to, looking for future show ideas. So I appreciate you all. This is so great. And while I'm thinking about it, thanks you guys for putting up with my crappy internet and my jerky, stuff that was going on while I was traveling around Ohio. You can see I'm back in Hawaii and back in my studio. So that issue is resolved, but thanks for being patient with me. I know that it wasn't always as easy to listen to. I went back and watched a few and told Jeff, I need a better road setup. That's not going to cut it.
I know I was getting impatient.
Greg Pace checks in and says, we all know how important the mental aspect plays into the game. And with Graham Ashcraft, you've seen it firsthand. Take a break and adjust mentally and then get back to pitching fundamentals that got him here. That's great. That's exactly true. The mental thing is a big deal. Fraley talked a lot about this last year when he was sent down to AAA on a rehab assignment and then stayed down there for a while. He acknowledged that, not only did he have to get himself right physically, but he had to get himself right mentally and spoke openly about seeking help with that. And, we don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence that Graham Ashcraft forgot how to pitch when his grandmother died. And I think that he's dealing with some stuff. And so hopefully this is a time for him to unplug from the game, figure out what's troubling him, whether it's physical or mental, and start to address it.
And I think that's something to remember about all of these guys. Like, we always talk about this with other sports, but it's the same with baseball. These guys were the best at what they did in their high school and in their, their college and things like that. Like, they had to be only the best of the best, to use a super old cliche, really get to the major leagues. So there's an ego about every single one of these guys. Ricky Karcher, as much as we love to joke about the fact that he was Wild Thing out there, Ricky Karcher had an ego about how good a pitcher he was. You can't be a major leaguer without one. So when your ego gets bruised, there's a little bit more than, than what we, us normal folk who aren't professional athletes, who sometimes when we fail, we're just like, well, yeah, I do this all the time. I'll figure it out and we'll be fine. Like, a guy like Graham Ashcraft had an amazing rookie season. He was having an amazing start to this season. And so whenever the struggles started, I'm sure it got into his head just like, yeah, I'm better than this. Why am I doing this? And then all of a sudden he gave up 6 runs and he's just like, what's happening here? So I think that it is just fine for him to take this stint and just kind of take a beat. Like, I don't necessarily know that this happened, but, maybe go home and turn on some island sounds or some beach sounds and throw on, I don't know, some good movie or something. Just turn your mind off for a minute. I love it. I do it all the time.
Jeff, when you were talking about trades the Reds have won versus, trades that the verdict's still out on, you left off a very, very important one. And Jared on Vinyl checks in with that. The Tyler Mahle trade is one of the best trades in Reds history. I don't think you said that one.
Yeah, I said they won the Tyler Mahle trade.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? Sorry, I missed it. It's so good. Let's talk about it again, because that's the trade that brought Spencer Steer over. And Spencer Steer, man, if you'd asked me at the beginning of June, Spencer Steer, Rookie of the Year, let's get on it. Let's hype it.
He's got a case. He really does.
I'm all for. I think that the Cincinnati Reds need to just win.
Yes, give them a team.
About this last week, I think it should be like just everybody gets one. You get a trophy, and you get a trophy, and so you give one to McLean, you give one to De La Cruz, you give one to Steer. Just pass them out, because what's going to happen is that those 3 guys are going to split up the votes enough that the dude from Arizona is going to win. But I want the Reds to win that award.
Right. And I mean, it was Spencer Steer and who else? That
Chase
came
Petty
in?
was no, that was the Sonny Gray.
Christian Encarnacion Strand.
That's right.
Christian Encarnacion Strand and
He
Spencer
wasn't in the
Steer for
He
Tyler
wasn't in the
Mahle.
Sonny Gray. He wasn't in the Sonny Gray trade.
No, Sonny Gray was just Chase Petty.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why. My bad. See, I'm glad you have a better memory for things like that than I do. All right, let's get 2 more in here, Jeff. Let me look for them while I'm doing that. Hype up what's coming up next for us.
Yeah, what's coming up next? We're going to get you set for this Houston series. Going to be interesting because the Astros, I mean, they're still good. They're 3.5 out of the AL West. The Rangers have just been amazing here, but the Astros haven't been like their normal selves yet. And hopefully they won't be their normal selves this weekend. Andrew Abbott's going to go on Friday. We're going to get you pumped up for that start as we see how much longer he can continue this scoreless streak. He's going to give up a run, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. He's going to give up a run. Hopefully it won't be on Friday night, though. Maybe he can continue his shutout streak on Friday night. But at some point in his career, he's probably going to give up a run. I can't remember the last pitcher to have a career and not allow a run. Let's see. Yeah, no one. So it's going to happen eventually.
Alex Gatto checks in and says that he wishes that we had a true power bat outfielder, a guy who would have, at least 12 home runs by now. What do you think about this, Jeff?
Well, let me follow this up real quick with one question. Do they need
to go get a power bat?
Well, I think Will Benson can be that guy. But let me follow it up with this question. Who leads the Reds in homers right now, and how many do they have? Spencer Steer.
Yeah.
With 9. Nobody on this team has double-digit home runs right now. So if they had somebody with double-digit home runs, that would be your main power guy. I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot more power from this lineup. I think we'll see it more from Will Benson. Will Benson has shown that he doesn't really hit lefties all that well, which is a little bit distressing because I was kind of hoping he would be a platoon buster. But against righties, ever since his call-up, he has looked fantastic, and he has got the kind of exit velocity on the average that we were expecting to see. I really think, yep, OJ got it right. I really think that Will Benson moving forward can be that power bat in the outfield. And Jake Fraley, to his credit, is streaky with his power, but he can have it from time to time.
Greg says, I wish Jeff showed some excitement in his post-game shorts when we win, laughing out loud. Yeah, Jeff is a little excitable when the Reds win.
A little bit, just a little bit.
Greg says that Greg Pace says that Fraley, when healthy and playing every day, could be that power bat in the outfield.
Maybe he just can't.
I don't know if he's ever really going to get. Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to get every day playing time like that. Do you think ultimately Spencer Steer just ends up being a corner outfielder? I mean, at some point in time, if I could see that could actually become a thing where he gets the majority of his playing time in the corner outfield.
And I think by majority, I think we're talking like maybe 60% of the time. Like it's not going to be 80%. Like he is, and we said this whenever he was first called up last September. But his role on this team is going to be the Ben Zobrist. It's going to be the Chris Bryant. It's going to be the guy that moves around. He plays a little bit of third, a little bit of second, a little bit of first, a little bit of left, a little bit of right, things like that. He's going to fit in as the Reds need him to do, and he's still going to get plenty of at-bats. We're still going to see him get either every day or almost every day at-bats throughout the course of his career, but he's ready to play in other positions. And I want to say that Chris Bryant, I think, for the majority of his career has played left field, but he's definitely played plenty of third base and tiny bit of shortstop and things like that. So I could see that being Spencer Steer.
There's a great conversation going on in the chat, but Jeff, I think that's probably a good spot to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I do want to say, folks, that over the next several weeks, it just works out that the Reds are off on Thursdays. So I know that's why we went live today. We figured a nice off day live. The Reds are off next week, Thursday. So we're going to do this again. We're going to run it back. We're going to do another live next week, Thursday, probably about the same time. Stay tuned to your podcast feeds. We'll give you more details as that comes closer. It's so much fun talking baseball with you guys. I have so much fun with these lives, Jeff. Before we get out of here, I do want to remind everyone that if you need a place to listen to the Reds hometown broadcast, you can do that with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you're going to get every pitch of the Reds baseball action.
And speaking to the conversation that's ongoing in the comments section, if you want to continue that, we do have a Discord, and basically that's kind of how the Discord is. We just keep on talking Reds all day long. We've got a link in that down in the description. You can join that. You can also join, I have started up a subtext. If you want to check that out, text I'm in to the number in the link. I've also got, or the number in the description. I've also got a link there in the description to join that as well. But we're always talking Reds. We're covering Reds. We're here with you every single day. Locked On Reds covers the Reds every day because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and we'll get you set for this Astro series coming up on tomorrow's podcast. So make sure you check us out. Why is that, Steve?
Because we are going to keep everyone locked on Reds every single day. Couldn't find the button, could you?
I mean,